Thanks a lot. Vice Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen, I should like to thank you for inviting me to speak here tonight, and for giving me the opportunity to visit Winchester for the first time. Against such a quintessentially English backdrop, it is a great pleasure for me to give you a small taste of continental Europe and to present you with some aspects of German economic life. The Winchester district has been twinned with the German town of Gießen for over 40 years. And as I will be speaking to you about retail banking and savings banks, I thought I would firstly show you the savings bank of Gießen. But what is a German savings bank? And what makes it different from other credit institutions, such as those you are familiar with here in the UK? I've heard these questions with increasing regularity over the past months, and I'm very happy to answer, hopefully, some of them. In order to understand what German savings banks are, it is perhaps important to know what they are not. They are neither private banks nor cooperative banks. They represent their own pillar of the German market alongside these two sectors. And above all, I will go into this in greater detail later, they are not state banks. The special aspect of the German banking market is that a significant part of it is decentrally organized in small, independent credit institutions, most notably the 422 savings banks and over 1,100 cooperative banks. These two pillars are particularly involved in the financing of small and medium-sized enterprises and for the provision of lending to Germany's population. Together, the savings banks and the cooperatives provide over 90% of the loans to tradesmen and small businesses. This quite impressive market share did not come easily. It has been earned through hard work and intense competition. And the decentralized form of the institutions has played a vital role in this. Decentralization promotes customer proximity. It facilitates an in-depth knowledge of an institution's geographical business area, its economic development, and its businesses. Local management responsibility results in short decision-making path and, importantly, it results in risk diversification. In my view, the German banking market's strength is not that it is particularly glamorous, may not be a cash cow for financial investors, and we don't have many big names. But we do have a large number of hidden champions in the financial industry. And this fits well with the German economic structure which is founded strongly on small and medium-sized enterprises, of which 90% are family-run businesses. It is these businesses with their highly innovative skills that provide work for 60% of German employees in the non-financial industry and create jobs in all regions of Germany. These businesses need to have access to financing, not only in Munich or Hamburg, but also in rather more remote areas such as Itzehoe or the Black Forest. This leads to the question of what role German savings banks play in the provision of credit to small and medium-sized enterprises. How come savings banks are the principal bank for 44% of German businesses? And how is that their extension of new loans to businesses has increased every year since 2007, even in the crisis years? As you may know, all credit institutions in Germany are subject to the German Banking Act and to the supervision of the Federal Financial Supervisory Authority. This means that in terms of competition between the business models of the big banking corporations, local cooperatives, and savings banks, there is no regulatory comfort zone zone for savings banks, much as I would like there to be one. We don't have any exemption from any rule. For example, savings banks in Germany do not enjoy state bank privileges such as state guarantees. Furthermore, over the past years, when big banks all across Europe had to be saved with taxpayers' money, savings banks in Germany did not receive state aid. They live from the money they make in daily business, and neither the state nor the municipality has shares in the savings banks. From a legal perspective, savings banks in Germany are credit institutions incorporated under public law. I understand that legal systems, such as the one here in Britain, might have difficulties in adopting this particular legal form. However, other legal forms would in fact be conceivable, provided that the core, the savings bank's business model, is maintained. This core also has legal stipulation in Germany, which we refer to as our public mandate. The roots of this public mandate date back to the birth of German savings banks more than 200 years ago. Savings banks were primarily founded by engaged citizens, and the founding mission of the first savings banks can still be found in the core elements of the public mandate. This includes promoting saving, making financial provision possible for the population, financial inclusion, the non-discriminatory provision of financial services with appropriate conditions to all citizens, and the use of part of their surpluses for a broad range of social commitments. This focus on retail customers and on the real economy continues to characterize the savings banks today. In practice, this means that local deposits do not flow outside the region. They are converted into local loans, and this, in turn, fuels economic cycles at the regional level. The economic goal of savings banks is self-support plus reserves. Profit maximization, especially short-term profit maximization, is not something savings banks aim for. Neither it is something they can afford in the long run. Because at the end of the day, high profits, that's the experience of the crisis, high profits are a high-risk game. And savings banks would be unavoidably exposed to these risks. Building on this, as well as the public mandate, savings banks are also subject to a second legal characteristic, namely the regional principle. The regional principle states that a savings bank is only permitted to operate in general within the administrative area in which it was founded. This means that the town, city, or community with its citizens and businesses determines the business opportunities of the savings bank. Poaching from wealthier regions is not permitted, and hiding from customers in distant skyscrapers, being it Frankfurt, London, or New York, is not possible. There is no socialization of risks and no artificial growth. The regional principle is complemented by the cooperation within the group. For example, the 422 German savings banks have a mutual IT center through which resources are also pooled in the development of rating methods for the corporate customers. In this way, economies of scale are achieved and competitiveness is increased. At the same time, all savings banks are legally independent and fully autonomous in their day-to-day business. So savings banks know their customers, measure risks carefully, and work efficiently. And it is in their own interest to promote the economic development of their communities. After all this theory, I would like to give you an example of savings banks financing for small and medium-sized enterprises. Let's say you are a businessman in a German province and you need 250,000 euros as an overdraft facility to finance machinery and equipment or in letters of credit for your international business. Firstly, finding a savings bank will be easy. Wherever you find a church, a town with a church and a town hall besides it, the chances are extremely high that the building across the road will be a savings bank. Secondly, you will probably not be a stranger to your savings bank. Maybe you already have a personal account there. Savings banks service 100 million current accounts in the country with a population in Germany of about 82 million people. Maybe you have taken out a housing construction loan with them, or as a new business startup, you were financed by the savings bank. We do this about 10,000 times a year. So you go into your nearest savings bank branch. As I already mentioned, there are 422 independent savings banks. They share a mutual brand name and a mutual business model, but have independent local responsibility for their own credit transactions, products, and conditions. With over 15,000 branches in Germany, there is no administrative district without a savings bank. Some of the economically weaker or peripheral regions, savings banks and cooperative banks are the only financial institutions still operating after the private banks have retreated from those regions. The savings bank will consider your loan application on the spot. They will also carry out an internal rating of your business, if one has not already been provided. The evaluation will not only include hard figures from your balance sheet, but also soft facts. For example, the current state of the local economy, the sector development in your industry, the environmental impact of your products, your personal business experience, and your company's order situation will be taken into consideration. This means that the savings bank will consider your loan application from a relatively broad perspective, and they will use information which they would otherwise not have access to if they were only located in Berlin or in Frankfurt. Your savings bank can also advise you about state-aided loans, particularly in the case of startup businesses. They will process many of these themselves, for example, on behalf of the State Development Bank, KfW. I'm aware that there is currently intense debate in the UK about realigning the support of small and medium-sized businesses. And I would like to give you two important tips from a German perspective. Firstly, savings banks were not founded to manage or distribute government funds. 200 years ago, there was no KfW State Development Bank. However, making these funds available fits well with the savings bank's business model. Secondly, the savings bank's small and medium-sized financing is predominantly supplied from its own funds and not from government development loans. Only in the case of business startups is 50% of the credit volume provided by public loans. But the overall volume of loans, partly backed up by state programs, only accounts for roughly 10% of the total loan volumes for small and medium-sized businesses in Germany. Today, the savings banks are the KfW State Development Bank's most important partner, although development loans represent only a complementary area of savings banks business. In the case of state-secured loans, the savings banks assume part of the risk in their own books, therefore perform a very careful risk assessment. In this way, risks are both realistically weighted and state loans are efficiently applied. As a central state institution, the KfW could not achieve this market proximity alone. In 2011, savings banks' business financing in Germany amounted to 326 billion euros. This is a 3% increase over 2010. And in 2012, we experienced an increase of 3.8%. I should like to stress once again that the funds for these loans came from the deposits received by savings banks from private and business customers. These deposits amounted to over 780 billion euros in 2011. Demands made on savings banks are high. They have to be a partner throughout all the stages of a business. If you can imagine, you meet the same business client for 20 years, not just because he has concerns every 3 months, or because you read his annual balance sheet and you have some questions about it, but because you are in constant contact, striving to strike a balance between the economic interests of your customer and the economic interests of your savings bank. Our borrowers are butchers and bakers, hotels and coffee shops. Savings banks financing extends from internationally operating automotive suppliers to furniture manufacturers or private research laboratories. And in 2012, they once again invested over €1 billion in around 11,000 startup businesses, resulting in the creation of 22,000 new jobs. However, savings banks do not only extend loans to business customers. They also provide advance financing for their orders. They also purchase goods and services themselves, for example, from local caterers or print shops. And they finance private, residential, construction and private consumption, both of which are also directly stimulate local demand. In this way, they are an intrinsic part of the local or regional economic cycle. Ladies and gentlemen, at the beginning of my speech, I mentioned decentralization. I would now like to convince you of the advantages of a banking system which is not completely homogeneous, but which is differentiated and, as a result, less susceptible to crisis. Homogeneous systems might seem easier to control, as large banking corporations are, but this is deceptive. Similar principles are practiced in many countries throughout the world, including the microfinance banks, which help to create small and medium-sized business structures in developing countries and emerging markets. Just a few years ago, this type of banking, which was referred to as grassroots banking, was looked upon with some condescension. Analysts, rating agencies, as well as some politicians in Brussels or in Berlin, suggested that we should put more emphasis on new products to generate higher earnings. However, what the recent crisis has once again shown is that a focused, retail-based business model rooted in the region is stable, much more so than the model which was designed to generate fast profits with products that were unrelated to the real economy and whose crash threatened entire national economies. Today, the global financial and economic system appears to be making a gradual recovery from the crisis. However, in actual fact, bank losses worldwide have been absorbed by public debt, a burden which now has to be borne by society and which restricts the scope for social welfare expenditure and which for the governments concerned. This means that the losses incurred during the crisis are still there. They have simply been shifted. And as a result, our global financial and economic system remains vulnerable to a new crisis. Germany's savings banks managed the crisis well. They retained their strength, their proven business model, the trusteeship of local governments, their cooperation within the savings banks finance group, and the principle of a sustainable business operation. And at the same time, they preserved the services they render for their customers and for their local business territories. This enabled them to play a positive role in Germany during the crisis and to stabilize the German economy. I have primarily spoken about the savings banks and their role as a financier, but it is important for me to stress that their macroeconomic impact extends above and beyond this. Savings banks are also major employers in Germany, where they have about 250,000 employees, 19,000 of whom are apprentices and trainees. Although the smallest savings bank only has 46 employees, it still offers a broad range of basic financial services, including corporate loans. And believe it or not, it operates profitably. Savings banks are themselves akin to SMEs. They are taxed locally, and the taxes pass directly into municipal budgets. In 2011, this amounted to over 2.7 billion euros. As you know, a very different model can be adopted by the financial industry, namely pursuing tax liabilities through the financial maze of global corporations with a specific aim of achieving a tax refund. The savings bank's net income is invested sustainably, and this too is laid down in law. Part of the net income goes towards savings bank's own capital reserves. This is the only way in which savings banks generate equity. It strengthens their ability to withstand crisis and provides the necessary leeway to extend more loans. The remainder flows back into the geographical business area, such as in the sponsorship of social or cultural projects to sports clubs, museums, or in the preservation of historical monuments. This is the German savings bank's model. It is profoundly influenced by the historical origins of its institutions and by its founding mission. This is ultimately reflected in its, no doubt in many ways, specifically German legal framework. I would urge you to address the issue of a more strongly diversified banking market as Windscable did before. My appeal would be for local retail banking, similar credit institutions structured in the interest of solid economic development, and for which there is a legal framework in place to prevent them from being incorporated sooner or later into one of the big banks at the first opportunity. We prevented that in Germany a few years ago. As I'm sure you know, the British Parliament introduced legislation in 1817 to promote the expansion of banks for savings and stipulated its charitable nature. By 1820, there were already almost 500 institutions in England and Scotland. At that time, there were only about half as many in Germany. I think the UK set us a fine example. Thank you very much for your attention.